Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session. Today's session is called Simply Irresistible, Why Mac Admins Should Love Telemetry. My name is Jordan Lindstedt, and I will invite up Eric Metzger, who's a senior sales engineer here at Jamf. If you do need live translation, that is available here. And depending on if we have time, we'll most likely be able to do some Q&A with Eric. If you don't want to ask a question publicly, for whatever reason, Eric should be roaming around afterwards. He'll also be in the expo hall later this afternoon around 3 o'clock. So with that, I'll welcome up Eric.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. I should have come from the back like the Wizard of Oz. Oh, okay. I'll do better. This is an awesome turnout. Thank you so much for coming. When I first checked on the first day it was available, there was 4 signups, and it was going to be an awesome session, but I was going to be very, a little bit, 4 people would have been a little bit awkward, because they all would have sat in the back, would have been great. All right, let's start this off right with an awesome selfie, so I can show my wife, and she can be proud of me. All right. Okay. Thank you for coming. This, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. Forward-looking statement. Fantastic. All right. Welcome to Simply Irresistible, Why Mac Admins Should Love Telemetry. Thank you so much for coming. I could not be more thrilled to be here. This is actually my first JNUC. Yeah, I know. I was like an MSP before I joined Jamf. I've still got my CCT shirt, if you guys know what CCT was. I'm going to try to wear it tomorrow, so it's kind of crazy. It's my first JNUC, but I'm super stoked. I actually came all the way from Abu Dhabi in the UAE. So I think I have the record of any Jamf for the longest trip. It was 28 and a half hours door to door and a 10-hour time zone. So I love all of you for being here. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. All right, my name is Eric Metzger. Yep, that's me. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Jamf. Seniors because of the white hair. Sales, I'm a senior engineer. I'm really a Mac admin at heart. Technically my title, but yes. Now, before we get into it, I want to take you back a little bit in time to a magical time, the year 2016. Our MacBook Pros had touch bars, a little bit of, depending on who you were, but I thought they were kind of cool. The iPhone 7, awesome phone, had a single camera and Touch ID, which I actually really miss Touch ID. I don't know about you, but I miss Touch ID. And if you were a Jamf admin, this was your server. The JSS with the green logo, rest in peace. You'll always have a place, in my heart at least. I really do miss Casper Suite. Granted, Jamf Pro's awesome, but a little bit of nostalgia. And I looked like this. Not an ounce of white hair. Full of hope. That sounds bad, but full of hope. No single white hair about. This incredibly handsome and young Eric was running an MSP outside Washington, D.C., focused on Apple devices and security. He was a really good Mac admin. I think I'm still a pretty good Mac admin, but he was a really good Mac admin. But he was always reactive, all right? He spent his days putting out one fire after another. I'm sure you can all relate. But it was a lot of constant emails, constant fires for all of my clients. Now, it's a real photo. After about 10,000, my Mac is running slow emails. If we think back to 2016, yeah, that was, wow, yeah. My Mac is running slow. I look like this after a while. Little Ted Kaczynski, but yeah. The sound of mail notifications do still haunt my dreams. Luckily at Jamf we use Outlook, so it's not so bad now, but that little ding does still trigger me a little bit. Now, even today, I feel like a lot of us are still reactive, right? So as admins, we've come a long way since the old JSS. Our tools are more advanced. Our dashboards look a lot prettier. But for a lot of us, the day-to-day still feels like we're putting out fires. It looks prettier, but we're still running behind a lot of times, or at least that's how it feels, at least to me sometimes. Now, that MSP that I started was called CMD Security. Some of you might remember it. It creates something called CMD Reporter. And if we fast forward a couple of years after making CMD Reporter, Jamf actually acquired us. And CMD Reporter was the precursor to what is now telemetry. So I've been doing this for a very long time, and it is a big passion of mine. And it's a core feature of Jamf Protect. And it's grown way beyond what we had originally built with CMD Reporter. And most importantly, it's not just for security anymore. It's something that Mac admins can really use directly and take advantage of. It allows us to start being more proactive as opposed to reactive. It's a great meme, come on. All right. Now, let's jump in. What is telemetry? Why should I use it? How is it different than what I currently do with Jamf Pro? And what's in it for me? Let's be honest. Like, why should I care? Now, let's compare telemetry inside of Jamf Protect to Jamf Pro, since I know most of us live in Jamf Pro. Now, Jamf Pro is extremely powerful. We all know that. But with telemetry, you get real-time data at low impact. Now, that low impact, I really want to point out because it's a super critical part of why we built CMD Reporter and built telemetry, to really make sure it doesn't really have an impact on your system. You don't really know it's there for the most part. I say that because I've seen some extension attribute scripts that are 3 pages long, and I've seen some Jamf Pro instances with hundreds of EAs. Now, think about the impact on your server, your database, the constant recons, and ask yourself, what are your needs? Is this something I could potentially replace with telemetry? Now, here's what I mean. I love this graphic. I'm not sure if you've seen it before. I don't know how often we use it, but I really, really do love this graphic. The top is sort of what you can see on the surface. It's what you can do with Jamf Pro. It's the tip of the iceberg. These are static insights that get reported only weekly by default. Now, on the other hand, underneath the surface, that's the bulk of what's possible. That's telemetry. You can enhance, build on, or even replace what you're currently doing with Pro in real time without all the extra bloat to your server and load to your network. For example, I know one client, I guess customer now, I still say client, one customer who does recon every 15 minutes on thousands of machines with over 300 extension attributes, just to try to get real-time information. Just think about what that does to your infrastructure, the server, the database, their machines, their network, everything. It's not good. The hint is that it's not good. But on top of everything, since telemetry pulls its data straight from the system level on your Mac using Apple's frameworks, you don't have to worry about EAs breaking when there's an update because you're getting everything directly from the Apple built-in frameworks with telemetry. So it's already there. Now, if you were in the State of the Union that I did a demo on, you saw this slide already. I love it. I didn't know they were using it, so maybe I wouldn't have put it in here, but it is a really good slide to sort of give you an idea of what does this really mean? What is telemetry? It's such a, if you're using it now, great. If you're not using it, it really is just this like ethereal thing that just, I don't know, it's still hard to explain. But the simplest definition is that it's a continuous stream of data from your endpoints, capturing key events like software usage, system changes, user behavior, on and on and on. It answers questions like who accessed this device and when, what software did they run, and which processes, and with what privileges was it run, and on and on and on. It's really an endless stream of data, but that's the point. It's real-time, endless updates as you're going. Now, that's a super simplified explanation. What it really is are events from your Mac that are pulled directly from Apple's native frameworks that are built in the Endpoint Security API, and that's enriched by Jamf Protect. These enriched events then get serialized and structured, or get serialized into structured JSON and sent out directly to your collector points of choice. Now, what does that actually mean? I sort of like breaking down, because honestly, JSON, I've been doing it for so many years, but even I remember when I first started that, like it looks really simple, and it is simple, but I really want like breaking it down so you get an idea of what we're doing. So what's it look like? Let's break down what JSON is. If you're familiar with JSON, great, but if you're not, It's really just a lightweight, human-readable format for storing and exchanging data. So JSON's not specific to Jamf Protect or telemetry or really anything. Again, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but a lot of different things use JSON because it's great. So in other words, if today's session was conveyed in JSON, it would look something like this. Because it breaks things down to make it readable, every JSON has a key value pair, or what you call properties. Here, the key in orange is the title, and the value is the name of my talk in white. These pairs or properties are enclosed inside of objects, the curly brackets in green, and there's also arrays, which are the square brackets in purple, and you could think of these as having multiple values for one key. It's all just about making the data more readable and breaking it down to coherent sections. This not only makes it readable for humans, because we can really kind of understand this if we look at it, but it breaks it down for a format that's easy to get parsed and filtered by whatever program or endpoint you're using to send this information to. With all that in mind, JSON makes a little bit more sense. So first we have today's session, simply irresistible, why Mac admins should love telemetry. Next, we have a group of related details about the session speaker, me, my name, my role, the company, all nested under speaker. And then we have the event details, another nested object showing key event details, the event, the location, the duration, the takeaways I'm hoping you get from today. And you'll actually notice the takeaways themselves in the yellow brackets are an array of topics, which is an ordered list of what I'm hoping to cover today. Telemetry, proactive IT, and workflows, and that's it. This is a full functioning JSON file. It's short, but it's a full JSON file. So now that we understand what JSON is, let's see how telemetry events are sent to the location of your choice, and let's discuss one of the most important aspects of telemetry and what sets it apart and makes it so valuable. It's the enrichment that we provide, the context for those events. So, we don't just pass raw logs through. When we were starting CMD Reporter, we actually tried that one time, and this was back in the late 2010s, mid-2010s. But we did a base model MacBook Air. We just turned it on, we wiped it, and we just sent logs. It was 50 gigabytes per machine on a MacBook Air, and it was just a fire hose of data. I mean, if you ever open up like console and look at it, it's just in your face and crazy. Not really helpful, not really usable. So we don't just pass everything straight through. What's really nice though is Apple's Endpoint Security API, or what we'll call just ES for now on, does a really good job of sending really important, amazing data. But it's not really, it's missing a few pieces that we need to give context to. So for example, here is an event. OD create user, Open Directory create user, which is a new user creation notification that is actually from Apple's ES. And on the left is what comes directly from Apple. And on the right is what telemetry provides and creates from that data. Now this one JSON is over 200 lines of data, or 200 lines, it's a lot. Now, if I'd never looked at one before, this would feel overwhelming. It kind of is. So let's break it down. Let's highlight some of the extra context that gets added to this ES event inside telemetry. Now, like I said, it looks intimidating, but it's meant to be actionable. We want to give you information to work off of and do things off of. So if you look closer, there's actually a ton of information that's super valuable to us as admins. This one part of the JSON is called the audit token section. It has the same keys and values like we discussed. But on the left is the raw ES, and on the right is the enriched telemetry data for the same one, which I'll break down in a second. So here, if we just look at the Endpoint Security API data first, at the very top is the OD create user, which set all this off. This is the event type from the Endpoint Security Framework. You can actually look it up inside of Apple's developer documents. And it's a user creation notification. Next is the instigator and audit token. Who did this event? Well, herein lies the problem a little bit. All this information is super valuable and critical, but it's all numerical. 502, 502, 562, 250, 20. This is what the Mac OS gives you raw. It's all numbers. Technically correct, but you have to do the work yourself to figure out what it means. You'd have to manually look up which user and which process maps to these specific values on that specific machine. I think you're kind of getting like why that could be a problem over and over and over again. Now here's what we do inside telemetry. It's the same section. You still get all the fields that are useful and needed, but you get the enriched context immediately, so you don't have to search for it. Here, we see that 502, AUID 502, is actually the username of who did it. Eric Tester MBP16. I wonder who that was. It's the user X performed the action. Now, the process ID, it now tells you the actual binary path that was executed. The user was created using the built-in users and groups. So now you're kind of getting the idea, okay, it was the user I expected it to, they used the actual system settings to do it, it wasn't anything fishy. But before, you didn't quite know what that 56250 really meant. Further down, we also give you the signing ID. Now you can see it was an Apple signed binary, something that wasn't there before. So we have all this amazing context, who did it, where they did it, and it was done by an Apple signed binary. From a security standpoint, or just even from an admin standpoint, that's all incredibly valuable data that we didn't have before. Now finally, at the very, very bottom, the UUID, that is a Jamf assigned UUID, or a universally unique identifier. It allows you to track this specific event across any systems, any logs, any workflows, any SIEMs. Anywhere you put this data, you can always go back to that UUID that we give you. Before, if a user was making 20 users on their machine for whatever reason, you'd have to try to backtrack, and it just makes it much easier to parse and filter all the data for you. So that extra context can end up saving you hours later for something as simple as this. Sorry, I like green. And finally, one of the most important, the where it happened of everything. So in this event, the information doesn't actually exist. The endpoint security API doesn't give it to you. So with telemetry, we give you some of the most important information that I think, as an admin, that we would want. We have the computer host name, the IP address, the Mac OS version number, and the serial number. Pretty important. Now, most of us aren't security experts, some of us maybe. We're Mac admins. So without all this extra added context added by Jamf and by telemetry, most of that raw data given is not really that valuable. It's almost like having no data at all, because we have to track it down and it's just numerical. So that extra context in telemetry really makes a huge difference. So now that we've covered JSON, we've covered telemetry, what it is, let's see some real world use cases. Let's take the event we just went over, a user being created, and see it in action and see how we can use it to our advantage as an admin. I don't know why I giggle. Doing this over the last 2 months and after 10 years, it still blows my mind. So we just covered a single event, OD create user, and that was 200 lines. But in reality, when a new user is created on a Mac, it's not just a single event. It's a burst of dozens of events that all happen under the hood. It calls in Open Directory, writes out plist files, updates group membership, and more. And every system that hits the Endpoint Security API, or every system call that hits it, gets written into telemetry, and telemetry captures it. So it's how you get a full audit trail of the events. This is all super important, super critical, but I love showing this because it ended up being 48 events. The second I clicked Create User, 48 events were created, and all of them very long. Now, all these events are sent as a JSON L file, or JSON line file. If you're old school, you might know of NDJSON, non-delimited, I think I'm saying that right, JSON. It's all the same thing. What it does is it takes that really long 200 lines of JSON and it puts it on a single line. So that way we can have all 48 events in one file, and each one of these lines is a super long JSON event. So our core event, the OD create user, is all the way up at the very, very top. If you can see it, probably not. But so all 200 lines of that is put at the very top, And this is a full user creation right here. It's bad I keep laughing at my own keynote, but I spent a lot of time on these images, and they still kind of crack me up. Now, I can already sense that this might be some of you or most of you, and that's okay, because I was in the exact same spot a few years ago, buried in logs, losing my mind a little bit with the beard. No idea how to make sense of them. But there's a big difference between then and now and when we first started doing this. Vibe coding. Again, I love my GIFs and my memes. I'm a millennial, I can't help it, and a dad. What's funny is I actually didn't know we were going to discuss vibe coding during the commercial State of the Union either, so I feel like, I don't know, did they take it from me? I don't know, I'm not saying, but maybe. But vibe coding. So it sounds silly, but really it's kind of amazing as I dug into this. Even the last few months, I know it's very distracting, but the last few months, the last year, things that we can do as admins using this amazing telemetry data that we really couldn't do before is really kind of blowing my mind and giving me a lot of hope of what, and that's why I wanted to do this session. Because before it really was just security teams. It's a massive amount of data. It's very hard to read. You need a SIEM or a SOAR and XDR typically to use it, but now you don't. So let me show you what I mean. Let me go back real quick. Talk about a lot of barriers, but I have to make a huge disclaimer. Everything that we're going to go through should be thought of as a proof of concept. This is a fantastic way to see what's possible and flesh out ideas, but please never vibe code into production. I have that in like bold in my notes. Please never vibe code into production. Such a great GIF. All right, so back to our user being created. What if all of your users are meant to be standard users, and now all of a sudden a new user gets created? That could be a big deal, and you'd need to know immediately that that happened as an admin. So how do we get from this to this? A Slack notification that goes off whenever any Mac in your fleet creates a new user. I pulled out the information that I felt was relevant, but all these fields can be tweaked or changed. What if I'm not using Slack? Here's a Teams notification. Same thing. All those fields that I chose and can be changed. So what exactly am I doing, and where do we start? Vibe coding. It's time to bring out the AI chatbots. Now, a huge word of caution. These telemetry files are full of PII, or potentially sensitive information. So be careful what you upload into these AI bots. I know it's very obvious, we're all very smart, we're Mac admins. I am putting a little asterisk because who knows what they're doing with this information. So please use tester devices, use sandbox devices. And I would also suggest, if your company's already paying for an AI feature, stick with that feature. Not only because it stays within your infrastructure and stays within sort of your already paid agreements you might have with the company, but it's also good to make a business use case later. If you're using tools you already have and it's not going to cost extra money to do all these cool things, it can make it a little bit easier to go to your boss and suggest these things. So again, that's my little asterisk to start with either fake data or sandbox demo before you're uploading things into any chatbot, really. Now in this scenario, this specific one, I use ChatGPT. I told it that we're a Microsoft shop. So again, the goal to keep things in our current ecosystem and infrastructure, I asked how we could do all this in Microsoft. Now the more you can do, again, the more you're compartmentalizing that data and the more you can make a business case for it later. Now, after really digging in and asking more questions, this wasn't just like oh, let's go, ChatGPT is always right, let's go. I had to ask a lot of questions. And I finally decided I could get away with an easier workflow than it originally gave me. I went from telemetry and Jamf Protect to Azure Function, which is inside of Azure if you're Office 365, straight to Slack. I mean, there's literally one middleman in the, well, I shouldn't say man in the middle, because that's a whole other thing. But there's really only just one thing in the middle. So here we go. After following the instructions from ChatGPT, I was able to get my function app working with a Python script that parsed and filtered all that incoming JSON data from the Macs. And again, this was all 100% vibe coded. I had to trial and error a lot to get exactly how I wanted it to work, but this came from someone who had never used the Azure Function app before. I know Azure, and I know what a function is, but I'd never used this before, and this was 100% vibe coded. Again, this is kind of why I wanted to do this session, because it's incredible what we're able to do now that even a year ago just wouldn't have been possible. So here's the final workflow. Telemetry sends the data to the Azure Function app. The app receives all the data. It waits for a specific event that we chose. In my case, the OD create user. Once it gets that file, it filters it out, only chooses the data I want from that 200 lines, and sends in the correct format for Slack to ingest it. So we go from this chaos on the left of 48 separate events to this clean alert on the right showing only the information that I want. All vibe coded, all without a SIEM or an XDR, which is still wild to me. So let's see what else we can do. I really wanted to see what we can do with this. I was getting really excited. So let's discuss shadow IT, which is using unapproved software or processes, I'm going to go with that today, which could be a huge issue. And let's see how telemetry can help. Now, what if an app is run directly from a mounted volume or from the downloads folder? This is like my parents. They download Chrome, I go to their house, and that mounted volume's on their desktop for 7 years. And they're running Chrome from that same mounted volume. It's fine for my mom and my dad, but for a user, not that great. Because I might not actually know that that machine or that app is actually on there. The way that Jamf Pro will collect data, sometimes if it's not in a specific known folder or application, it won't catch it. Now, you can do this inside of Pro technically, but it takes a lot of extra work. Now, what if we could create an alert instead, because telemetry will pull this automatically. Now, this time, this is also kind of cool, I asked for ChatGPT to make me a CSV of everything that happened. Now, I'd like to say I had this idea to start out. Marcus Ransom, I'm sure that name jumps out to a lot of people, Mac admins, Marcus Ransom, awesome guy. He's like, do a CSV. I was like, oh my God, of course, because I decided to try to do this live inside of a Slack demo instance, and I was getting hundreds of notifications, and I was losing my mind. So instead, I did a CSV first. Now, it's a lot of data and a lot of noise when you're trying to get all this information from telemetry, because there's a lot to it. By using a CSV to start out, I was able to parse down and filter a lot of false positives and get my script working the way I wanted to before sending it to Slack. So one interesting thing, for example, that I learned, if I open up Google Chrome, it actually opens up all of Google Chrome's helpers as well, because Google Chrome can't just be Google Chrome. It has to have GPU helper and Chrome helper and CPU helper and the helper's helper and then RAM helper. We love Chrome here. But my point being is that all of a sudden it showed 17 applications happened all at once. It's a lot of noise. But I was able to really pare it down and doing a lot, again, all vibe coding. Now, the biggest thing for me was after telling the script to ignore everything from com.apple and com.jamf, it went from hundreds of events down to only 19 over the course of a week. Much easier to work with. And after more trial and error, I was able to deploy it as another function in the same app I created for my new user alert. So since telemetry allows me to send multiple HTTP destinations, I can make as many as I want inside of the same action inside of Protect. So Protect, I'm just selecting the endpoint of the Azure function, and the Azure function is just taking it, and I can make as many as I'd like, which was also really cool and exciting, because I didn't know that any of this was possible. So here's the combined workflow of the original one and now the shadow IT. It goes from one stream of telemetry, and you can send the data to multiple functions to be alerted to specific events, and in our case, whether new users created or the shadow IT of a new app. So here we go in final form. Here's the finished product. I set it up so it sent alerts whenever a new application was launched from a non-standard location. It's not perfect yet, but it is super helpful and awesome to see what's possible. Like Chrome being mounted from a mounted volume in this example. Now, there are two things we played around with today that I personally found useful as a Mac admin, but at least I don't think you came to this session for me to tell you exactly what to do and exactly how to use this, but I want to give you an idea of what's possible and sort of get your brain thinking, give you the knowledge of how you can use this in your own environment, in your own infrastructure. So some key takeaways and random musings of a white, bearded, older Mac admin now. If only he knew back then. Now, telemetry is really not just a tool, it's a shift in mindset. Like I said, most of us live in pro. EAs are awesome, and working in Jamf Pro APIs are awesome. So it really does shift your mindset a little bit. You're going from your standard, what you're comfortable with, to getting real-time, instant information, and it's a lot of information, and trying to figure out how to learn what you can do or how you can flow from it. But it's also a new strategy from being reactive to proactive. I think this one's really important, especially as admins. Putting out fires gets old. It's stressful. If you can be sort of that like, I guess I'll say Jamf hero. But if you can be that awesome admin, it's like, hey, this happened before the user even know it happened. I just think that's awesome, and it's possible. So we move from putting out fires to seeing how far we can take things with the data that's already available to us and included. Like all this is included. If you have Jamf for Mac, this is all just part of it. There's nothing extra you have to do. And finally, as a word of caution, remember this is incredibly sensitive information, so don't just throw it anywhere and use best practices. And I will say, honestly, this will make you a much better prompter and will make you better at using AI as a tool. I thought I did a pretty decent job before I really dug into this. I learned a lot about prompting and a lot about using AI tools. But I did also learn that our AI overlords are not quite there yet. ChatGPT made a ton of mistakes, like a ton of mistakes. It also kept using old code bases. So I thought I was losing my mind because it was using Azure version 1.1 instead of 1.2. And I'm like, anyway, AI makes mistakes. So trust but verify. Keep asking questions. Just because it gives you one workflow, that doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean it can't be better. Use your judgment. You guys are humans, you're Mac admins, you've been doing this longer than ChatGPT has. I make the example, it drives my wife crazy. I will use Apple Maps or Google Maps to go somewhere I know or I'm already going. And if it tells me to turn into a river, I'll turn into a river. I need to take my own advice. I need to trust but verify. So sometimes we get into this, it's tech, we're techies. We believe it, we think it's awesome, it is awesome, but trust but verify, please. Now, just to really push this idea forward, to keep questioning our AI chatbot and overlords. Here's some images that I'd asked it to make for this presentation. It still has a long way to go. The AI Armageddon that I'm hearing about is going to take all of our jobs is not quite here yet. These are horrifying. And this is just what it spit out. So I wanted to show this because there was a lot of prompting and a lot of learning to make things better, even from an image standpoint. So now what? Try and try again. Once you start working telemetry, start small. Gather data on the problem first. Start with your own machine or test machine, and start by changing. So I really wish I could show this to you, and I should have gotten resources. We'll talk if you have any questions. But if you don't know, when you set up telemetry, you can actually select it to send logs directly to the individual file. Because the logs are so small and so low impact, it's just a few megabytes. I mean, even after a couple weeks or a couple months, you're talking like maybe 70, 80 megabytes of data. So you can actually set it so it creates on a private var log on the Mac. What's interesting is that Jamf Protect.log is actually just a .jsonl file with a different ending. So if you literally just change .log to .jsonl, you have a full functioning, workable telemetry file to work from. So you don't even have to start sending it via HTTP, sending it to an endpoint, sending whatever. You can do it directly on your Mac, and you have all that telemetry data directly on your Mac. So that's how I would suggest to start out. Open up telemetry, have it write logs to your individual Mac, and play around with it, open it up. I used Visual Studio as my IDE to look at everything. Super easy, super useful. I was even able to ask ChatGPT to pull out individual JSONs, make it pretty, re-upload it. Like, there's just a lot you can do. And that's why the final one of iterate and learn, just keep doing it over and over and over again, and it just gets better and better. And just remember, my son believes in you. You can do anything. I love this photo. This is him from like 4.5 years ago. Really interesting. That couch was brown originally, and I thought it didn't look great, so I asked Gemini to make it white, and it did an awesome job. But this was after like 2 months of prompting. I finally learned how to prompt it correctly. But my son, Jonathan, believes in you, and I believe in you, so you can do anything. Now, there's more than one route. We talked about Microsoft today. We talked a lot about Azure. Not everyone's a Microsoft shop. That's great. Some people are AWS. Some people are Google Cloud. So what's interesting, though, is they all have very similar services and functions. So today we talked about the function app, which is just an HTTP ingest. We're sending in the data. But really, everyone has their own version. What's also nice is you can build out. What I'm talking about is a very simple workflow, but you could do things like you could be storing the data, you could be sending to different locations, you could be making GUIs and dashboards out of it. Like, it's really incredible what you can make without a SIEM or an XDR with all this data. Now, this is what really blew my mind. So again, this was ChatGPT napkin math is what I'm gonna call it. That's my big asterisk, right? So I asked it to estimate the costs for what we were doing, and this includes everything. So I just did functions, $1. But I mean, even if you did everything, let's say you had 50,000 devices. I said it, imagine you're going full-blown telemetry, you're sending everything. 50,000 devices, you're looking at about $2,100 a month. I don't know if any of you use a SIEM or a SOAR, and you pay by gigabyte. This blew my mind. Especially as a Mac admin, if either your security is gatekeeping your SIEM or your SOAR, or you're not comfortable using it, or your company's not gonna approve the cost of a SIEM or an XDR, the fact that you can do this with the tools you already have, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Azure, and for the price you have, I mean, if your manager won't approve $35 a month, I'm not gonna say I'll pay for it. I'm gonna stop myself right there, but I mean, come on, like, this is awesome. So it's really exciting to think about how far you can take all this for the fraction of the cost of a SIEM or an XDR. Now, this is just the beginning. The workflows we looked at today are simple proofs of concept. But once you start, the possibilities are endless. For example, inside of telemetry, you can also collect unified logs into the same stream for even more custom analytics and more data. It's really cool. Like, once you start getting unified logs and really taking the next level, it's awesome. You can also use Jamf Pro directly to scrape and upload any Jamf Protect.log file from anyone in your fleet and upload it into Jamf Pro for you to download. And you can either do that to run forensics, run different tests, but the big one is for auditing or forensics. So let's say, if nothing else, you think you're never going to use telemetry. If you just activate it on your users' computers, it won't. The network, the impact is so low from a network standpoint, from a storage standpoint. You kind of have a built-in auditing. If anything happens, and your boss goes, "Do we have auditing functions?" Well, actually, we kind of do. I can give you a whole log. And it takes a while for it to spin over. I have some customers that will save an entire year's worth of auditing data from telemetry because it's so low and such a low a low file size. And also, hey, we love REAs. You could also create a function app that plugs into the Jamf Pro API to create a new extension attribute. So we talked about doing, Slack or Microsoft Teams alert, but why not create an EA? You're using instant real-time data to automatically create an EA inside Jamf Pro, and because it's using the Apple built-in frameworks of the Endpoint Security API, I'm not gonna say the EA won't break, but I feel like it's less likely. Now, God, these photos, they're so good, It took so long. Eventually you'll get there, kind of, all right? The reason I like this photo, I like bringing it up, is because your scripts and your workflows aren't gonna be perfect. There's a saying that don't let perfection be the enemy of good. No. Yes. Okay, good. I'm getting a nod, yes. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. So what I'm trying to say here is like, look, don't go for perfection. Try again. Eventually you'll get there. When you're leveraging telemetry, you're not just managing devices or putting out fires. You're building a more efficient, proactive, and responsive IT operation. And most importantly, you're helping yourself. Once you really, I would love to hear what you guys do with this, because I think there's a lot of ways that you can make your life easier, and it's okay to be selfish. Like, we worry about our users all the time. Like, it's okay to be selfish. So I would say go out there, make cool stuff, share with the community, share with the Maxis admins community. And yes, I know telemetry is spelled wrong in the photo. Again, not perfection, but much, much better than the monstrosities of before. Because it actually looks like me. He looks very angry. I'm never that angry. I was a little angry doing this telemetry presentation, trying to figure it all out, but not that angry. So look, I went over a lot today, and I had to skip over a lot of the setup. So if you have any questions, I will be here. I'll be in the expo hall at 3 o'clock today. You can also hit me up on Slack. I'm on Maxis Admins. I'm awful about responding. I need to get better. I'm also a millennial professional, so of course I use LinkedIn. This QR code is not what you think it is. It's not a Rickroll either, but it was going to be resources originally. Yeah, I ran out of time. It's not resources. But what it is I have an amazing colleague, Scott McKay, based out in EMEA in the UK. He was recently at Maxis Admins Gothenburg. I looked it up. That's in Sweden, if you don't know. It is in English, it says in English, but he also did a really cool telemetry admins presentation. So I definitely recommend checking it out. And on that, at exactly 1:45, thank you so much for being my first ever JNUC audience. I love you guys so much. I'll be around for a little bit, but I will be out also at the Expo Hall at 3 o'clock. And if you're coming to an interactive lab later about compliance benchmarks with Rot Podman, I'll be there too. So you'll be seeing a lot of me. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.